Hello, everyone. For my first talk, I'm going to be talking about feature detection for games, specifically for Linux and in Lutris. But yeah, it can be applied. Like the same principles can be applied for all the games, even Steam ones. So Linux gaming has become really good in the past few years. We've had thanks to mostly Valve, like the Steam Deck and everything like that. We've had all the APIs, like the new ones that are used in really recent games are available now on Linux. So we can do ray tracing, DLSS, HDR is not yet fully there, but it's coming here. VR as well, it's still experimental, but it works. Yeah, GameScope has solved tons of issues as well, regarding displays. But the problem is there's not everyone has the latest and greatest hardware to run games. And also we're seeing an increase in ARM-based platforms like Raspberry Pi and stuff like this that are really low powered, and it can still run games, but not everything. So it kind of has has to deal with that. So feature detection, what is that? I mean, and where does the term come from? Comes mostly from web development. So feature detection, that's something that's used for by good websites. I mean, it should be used by all websites. Usually you have two terms that are hand in hand. It's feature detection and graceful degradation. So you don't have all the features of a website, but you can still access the contents. So you can still have you can still read a web page whether or not you have the latest browser or all the APIs needed. For games, it's a little bit different because you can't really degrade a game. I mean, sometimes you can, but it's a bit more tricky. So it's mostly gonna be whether you can or not have a good experience playing a game on Linux. On the web side, it's something that is very important regarding accessibility. So now we mostly have modern browsers, but you have things like screen readers that have less features than a browser. So recently we added in the release of Lutris that was released a few weeks ago, a new feature that will detect what GPUs you have on your system, and it will send the PCI IDs of those to the Lutris websites, and it will return the APIs that you can download. So it's based on there's a website called PCI IDs, UCW, it's in Czech, that offers a big database of pretty much all PCI devices. You can have you send your PCI ID, and you get back the vendor, the model name of your PCI device. And from there, I wanted to have a match from the models of graphics cards and all of this to what APIs, graphical APIs are supported by this device. So mainly OpenGL, Vulkan, and Direct3D. Direct3D is not so important. I mean, it kind of is, it goes hand in hand with the Vulkan development, Vulkan supports. What will matter is you don't want to ship a version of DXVK or VKD3D to some devices that won't support them. So you can get this information from Wikipedia. Here you have a screenshot of the GeForce and which APIs they support. I also did that for AMD. For Intel, it's a bit complicated. There's too many chipsets of Intel, so we still need some information. But yeah, you send the PCI IDs to the Lutris website. That's the nice Django REST framework that you can access on the Lutris websites. You send it the PCI IDs. You can send several of them supported by commas, and you get back the model name, the vendor, the device name, even the sub vendor. So for example, my GeForce is a PNY. So it also has like it also contains that information. I added like the generation, so the 360 is Ampere generation. There, I also have an APU, which has a Vega chipsets, and you get like you see that it supports like the most modern like APIs, like so Vulkan 1.3 on all sides and Direct 3D 12. So it's mostly going to be useful for older hardware. So that's like the, if you go on Tech Power Up, you can get a very good descriptions of your GPU, all the supported features. So that's a very good source, like if you want to know like if your GPU is supported. I mean, of course, Lutris is going to be able to do that for you, but if you ever need like, oh, which version of DirectX is supported on my old laptop, for example, then you can look up your GPU on Tech Power Up and find this kind of table, and it will tell you everything you need to know. So PCI IDs, they're like, yeah, they're composed like of 4 parts. You have like the main, the most important thing is like the 2 first values. So it's going to be like the vendor, 10D is like NVIDIA. You have 8086, that's very nice, like Intel. And AMD was ATI Technologies before, but it's like 1002. Then like the subsystem, you have 2 other values, but they're like, you don't really need them. So we just need like the 2 first values to determine like what generation GPU you have. So there are some problems. If you start Lutris on a Raspberry Pi, for example, then you won't get a PCI ID. It will give you just the driver you're using, because basically, like there's like no PCI bus like on the Pi. So yeah, and also it doesn't really depend. Everything doesn't depend on the PCI ID of your card. It also depend on what driver you have in your system. So some drivers, if you have like an older version of Mesa, you might have only support for Vulkan 1.2. If you update your Mesa to something like Bleeding Edge, you will get support for Vulkan 1.3. Like it's, especially I think it's valid for Intel chipsets. So what I plan to do is also send the driver used to the Lutris website, so they can give like the proper information. So what could we do like like on the Lutris side for like this kind of feature detection? We could also have like how much space is needed for a game. So that's pretty easy. You say, okay, I need like 50 gigs of space for a game to install. But also if you have like if you download a game from GOG, or like some others, like for example, a Humble Bundle or some other service that has like offline like installers, you will also need to account for like the space of the installers. Also, like what you have like in system requirements in games is the RAM amount. That's really easy to detect. You can say, okay, this game requires at least like 12 gigs of RAM, and if you don't have that amount in your system, like Lutris will be able to say, oh, maybe you can't run this game because you don't have the necessary amount of RAM. Also, like CPU side, I mean, we could, if you have a game that requires like a quad core or something like that, I mean, you can send this information and Lutris will be able to say, okay, you can or cannot run this game based on your configuration. Something that's more difficult is like having some kind of score based on your hardware. If you remember Windows Vista, they introduced like this kind of score for UPC, and they told you, okay, well, UPC is able to do like very good, like has a very good processor. It's like okay amount of RAM, but your graphics card is like not that good. On Lutris, I would like separate. I wouldn't do like a base score like this like in Windows Vista, but I find it something that's pretty good, like to have a kind of score that's spanned from like very old GPUs to modern ones. So you can't really use like a benchmark. I mean, you would have to use like a benchmark that works on everything to have the kind of score. But right now I haven't found like a good way to measure like speed that really is applicable to any GPU that exists. So there's not only hardware requirements, there's also like some software requirements. A lot of games, they need like .NET or Visual C++ runtime. On Steam, you have like this, those things are automatically installed. They're like in a reduced folder. On the Lutris side, usually you would put that information in Lutris scripts so that when you install a game from Lutris, like from the websites, it would get installed. But if we had this data in some sort of like metadata on the game itself, like not in install scripts, but for the game, then we wouldn't need to maintain scripts as much. So we have like automatic installers for like a lot of the services we have, the integration. So you don't need an install script for like a GOG game, for example. But if you're missing some dependencies like .NET or something like that, if we know beforehand, like before installing the game, that the game will need like .NET, then you can get that installed pretty quickly, like without having to maintain like a full install script. And also we can give warnings like for games that won't run, like say Fortnite or Destiny 2. We can say, oh, well, don't bother with that game. It has like a kernel level anti-cheat. Just don't run it. Don't try. It's not going to work. Another thing we introduced like in the latest Lutris version is up-to-date wine. So we've been using wine GE recently, and now we push like every time that a wine version is out, we push it to everyone. It's basically the same thing. We've been doing that for DXVK and VK3D, but now we have also wine that is pushed like, to the latest version. This was a goal since the very beginning of Lutris. I wanted to have something that's worked differently from Play on Linux, because Play on Linux has this really, okay, you install the game with a specific version of wine, and then it sticks to this version. I don't find this to be useful for the development of wine, because you get like your game running on an old version of wine, and then if there is a regression, then you can't detect it easily. I mean, you don't get that kind of feedback. So for the game that do need an older version, what we're going to do is make it necessary to provide a link to an issue tracker, so it can be like on WineHQ, like on the Proton issue tracker or something like that, that says the game won't run on the latest wine version because of this. And so that when we track like that bug report, when that bug report is closed, then we can say, okay, we need to retest that game, and if the regression is gone, then we can put back the game on the latest wine version. Another thing that we're going to be improving in Lutris is a system of ratings. So it's kind of here like there is some code that implements ratings, but in the beginning we were like doing the same thing as WineHQ. So with like the platinum, gold, silver system and garbage and everything. We want to move away from that, because the whole point of Lutris is to automate the steps that we would have to do, like for the games that would be rated gold or silver. Those games need like manual steps to get running, but that's the whole point of Lutris, is to automate those steps. So we're going to move to something that's closer to Steam Deck verified, but not like specific on a Steam Deck, because the Steam Deck also has to get a Steam Deck verified status, you need to have like good support for controllers. The text has to be like readable on the Steam Deck size and everything. So it has a whole bunch of other requirements that you don't really have on desktop or on the TV. So it's going to be just, okay, does the game provide a good experience out of the box or not? And if it does, then it will have a good rating. And on top of that, then you can also add like some known issues for the game. So it's going to be the decision whether a game are playable is like subjective, maybe. So it might have like a lot of issues, but okay, you can work around them and you still get a playable state. But at some point, the game has like so many issues that you want to demote it to something like not supported. So yeah, we're going to be pushing those improvements like in the upcoming months. There's also already some development that has started, but I would be interested in like getting feedback from everyone. Do you think I was wondering, is maybe like sending this hardware information, does that make you feel uncomfortable because it's like close to telemetry, or just you don't care? It's like, okay, you don't care if like we know what GPU you use. I mean, it also is like not, we don't attach this information like to your username or anything. We just basically send that to the website and we don't store it. Like we might store it like for statistics purposes, like to know like what kind of GPUs are most used, and like the Steam survey. But right now we're just making a query to the website and like discarding like this information. So yeah, yeah. What kind of thing would you like how like what were your issues getting games to work? Yeah, I'm interested in feedback.
Yep. Yeah, I guess. Do you use the black box? Yeah. So I think that people would appreciate it if the telemetry part, or where you actually send your data to a server, would be optional. So is there a reason why you have to go to the API and not have like a downloadable database that you can use instead?
I've considered, because it would be, well, you need like to keep it up to date. No, I guess that would be possible to have a downloadable version as well to improve offline supports. Yeah, that's something we could consider. But also on a very game per game basis, if we start introducing like game requirements, it's going to be very hard to download like a whole like Lutris game library, like the one we have on the website.
So regarding the telemetry, if you're going to do that, I think it might be, I don't know if you've done this yet already or not, but it might be a good idea if you could maybe on first, like after first installation, you know, when they open the application and it'll give a pop-up that says, hey, we're going to check this stuff. This is why we do it. And you just a quick explanation as to why, or and obviously give them an option if they don't want to do it.
Yeah, but the thing is, we need that information like right at the start, because we're going to download the XVK, we're going to download the VK3D, and to give you the right version of the XVK, then we need to know like what GPU you have, or I mean, and if your GPU doesn't support Vulkan at all, we won't provide the XVK at all. So yeah.
Well, I think another thing that you might be able to do on that with, I mean, in specific regards to GPUs, you can, on most desktops, so at least x86, you can check the LSPCI output and check, you know, the vendor and the model. Obviously, doing that and then checking it against the database would be easy to find in terms of what model they're using, or, you know, what make, model, etc. But again, I think that would also be what he said, really good to store in a database that they can just pull when Lutris first starts.
Yeah.
You could have just thrown it at me. The other question is, when you plan on starting dropping the ancient versions of Wine that are like available to download in Lutris? Because when are you planning to start dropping the ancient versions of Wine you provide in Lutris? Because right now there are like about 2,000 of those, something like that.
Yeah, so we have like, I'm going to try to really reduce the number of Wine versions that we support. I have some code that detects like what games are using like a pinned Wine version, and I have written I added like some fields in the database to be able to put like a bug tracker link for those games. It's like not fully complete yet, but once I start doing that, we're going to review like every game that has like a pinned version of Wine, and when no game uses a specific Wine version, that Wine version can be deleted. And the goal would be ideally to have just the Wine versions that are needed for some games, like the games that have regressions. And also, yes, and also the game-specific builds for League of Legends. I think that's the only game that requires a special build now. I remember that we used to have builds for Sims 2, LA Noire, what's like Darkness 2. Like we had like one build per game at some points. It was really a pain to maintain because we would ship that one build for this just one game, and now we have like it's so much better now that the fear of regression is like pretty much eliminated, and staying like on top of Wine development, I think will really help like the Wine developers. So that's really the goal, is to really push people to use like the latest Wine version, so that it also makes Wine better.
About the API and the telemetry, you could also, I think, query the API directly. So if you launch Lutris, you could create a Vulkan instance, query the supported GPUs, and get the supported feature level. So you could, for the XVK, for VKD3D, you could do that. And skip the telemetry
but
part.
Does it give you like the supported version?
It gives you the instance version, or you can also have the supported API version per GPU.
And you can query all the supported extensions as well.
Yeah,
Extensions too. Okay.
we have code that does that as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So for feature detection for like software dependencies, have you considered doing some sort of automation where you just have a server somewhere that just keeps downloading games and checking like the DLL imports for like Visual C runtimes or whatever to just automatically determine those for some titles at least?
I think it should be possible to detect that automatically to some degree. Maybe it's possible to detect whether or not like a game is written using XNA, for example. So if we detect, oh, this is like a XNA game, then okay, we're going to run like the wine tricks verbs that's installed like XNA. But most of the time, I expect this to be like manually maintained. Yes. Thank you.